Right, good morning. As you're aware, Operation Persist is SAPOL's strategy to review and investigate cold case homicides, and the murder of Robert Sabeckis is one of those cases. On the 13th of January 2000, Robert was fatally shot in the car park at the Maslins Beach, and his murder has remained unsolved ever since. There had been no suspects, but we had for many years a DNA sample of that offender. Since November 2017, major crime detectives have been working in conjunction with our own forensic lab, the forensic lab in New Zealand, and New Zealand detectives on this investigation, and I'm happy to say that yesterday evening New Zealand police arrested a 43-year-old man at the suburb of Piha, just outside of Auckland in New Zealand, and he's been charged with murder. I'll just take you back through the history of this case and explain to you how today's events have unfolded. In the early hours of the 1st of January 2000, a house at 4 Dover Street, Aldinga, was broken into, and a shotgun and a pistol were stolen. The house was set alight in the room where the guns had been kept, and the house suffered significant damage. There were no suspects in relation to that case, and that case was to become linked to the murder of Robert. At 1:15 on the 13th of January, Robert was in his car at the Maslins Beach car park when he was fatally shot. The offender stole his car and drove off, and was followed by a witness for about 350 metres before the vehicle stopped. The witness stopped about 100 metres behind to make observations. The offender exited the car and pointed what the witness thought at the time was a pipe at him, but it subsequently became known that that was a sawn-off shotgun. The offender then got back into his car, drove about another 250 metres at speed and crashed into scrub on the side of Chewett Road. The driver fled the car across paddocks, and despite a search, wasn't found. Later that afternoon, a gun bag was found floating in the sea by people snorkelling off Thomas Street, Aldinga Beach, and that bag contained jeans, a towel, bullets, and the butt of a sawn-off shotgun. On the 18th of January, so almost 3 weeks later, a shotgun and a green jacket were found in scrubland, south of where the offender had run. Forensics proved conclusively that that shotgun was the shotgun used to murder Robert, and the forensic examination both on the night and of what was found in the paddock since has provided multiple DNA profiles. Over the years, those DNA profiles have been checked both nationally and internationally through Interpol, and we've been unable to achieve any match. The investigation has been reviewed over time, and efforts have continued over the years to try and identify who may be responsible for those DNA profiles. In 2016, the New Zealand Criminal Investigations Bodily Samples Act was amended to allow foreign law enforcement agencies to check their samples from crime scenes against their database. So up until 2016, we were unable to have our crime scene samples checked against the New Zealand DNA database. That was a huge step forward for us because it meant that we could get our unidentified samples sent to New Zealand and checked. However, unfortunately, the offender still wasn't on the system in New Zealand, but on the 20th of July 2017, he was arrested for an unrelated matter in New Zealand, and a sample of his DNA taken and uploaded to their database. Late last year, we sent our profiles to New Zealand again to be checked in New Zealand, and on the 19th of January we received written confirmation that we had a positive match for the suspect, who is now 43 and living at a suburb called Piha, which is near Auckland. We know the man was 25 at the time of the murder. We know that he resided in Oldham Street, Aldinga. He was a Maori person, and he resided with a family there, but the family he lived with was a Caucasian family. Oldham Street was about 600 metres from where the house was broken into, It's about 270 metres from where the firearm bag was found floating in the sea, and about 4.5 kilometres from where Mr Sabeckis was murdered. On the 6th of April 2000, so 3 months after the murder, the suspect left and returned to New Zealand. And since then, as I say, the investigations continued over the years. We obtained an arrest warrant at the Adelaide Magistrates Court in early February, and on the 27th of February that was endorsed by a New Zealand judge who issued the warrant for his murder. On Wednesday this week, 2 detectives from South Australia flew to Auckland, where they met with detectives from the Henderson area, and they've been working with them since then, and that culminated in the arrest of the suspect last night at about 6 p.m. New Zealand time or 3:30 SA time. He was then interviewed by South Australian detectives, and he's been formally charged at the Henderson Police Station, and he will appear in the Waitakere Court later today at about 11:45 a.m. South Australian time. Detectives are also conducting investigations in New Zealand with New Zealand detectives, and they'll be there for some time. The sort of things we need to know at this stage is we want everybody to realise that this isn't the end of the investigation, this is very much the start of the investigation. So we've had the DNA sample which links this offender to the crime, and we're satisfied there's sufficient to arrest and charge him. However, the investigation really starts in earnest now because this is the first time we've known who the suspect is. We need to know anybody who knew the suspect, anyone with knowledge of the murder, and anyone with information about the theft of the firearms or and in particular the location of the pistol. I've got some more information on a PowerPoint which will actually indicate where certain things happened and put things into perspective for you, and I'm happy to run through that with you now. So that slide shows you the Gull Rock car park at Meslands Beach and the location of Mr Sabeckis' car and where his body was found on the ground in relation to his car. That's a bigger overview showing the Meslands Beach car park at the top of the slide and Aldinga Beach, the square at the bottom. So you've got the murder scene, and then you have the location where the crash site nearby in Chewett Road, and then to the south of that where the gun and the coat were recovered. It's about 4.5 kilometres from there down to Oldham Street where the suspect lived, but you can see the close proximity of the location where the guns were stolen in Dover Street, where the suspect lived in Oldham Street, and where the gun bag was found floating off Thomas Street. What we can tell you about the suspect is that while he was living in South Australia, he was going by the name of Paul Taylor, and although he's Maori and does have a Maori name which will be disclosed later in court, he was commonly known here by the name of Paul Taylor. He was a Maori or Islander appearance, about 25 years of age, and had lived at the Aldinga Beach address since about late 1999. He was attending the Christie's Beach High School, undertaking an adult learning course, and drove a brown or goldie coloured Holden Gemini similar to the one depicted on the screen. Significantly, the jacket on the left, people may remember a Maori person who lived in their area, perhaps getting around in that jacket or fishing on a jetty. The jacket had squid ink on it, indicating that it had been used by whoever for fishing. We know the suspect arrived in South Australia in 1984, and he'd been here for about 6 years, living in various suburbs, but importantly, he was living in Oldham Street at the time of the murder of Mr Sabeckis. So we want people to think back, people who lived in that area, anyone who knows the young Maori lad who drove the little Gemini who went to Christie's Beach High School. We need to know everybody who knew him so that we can build a picture of his life and uncover exactly what happened in this case. I'm happy to take your questions.
This presumably wasn't a suspect at all at the time, he didn't come under your radar?
No, there'd been no suspects at all for the last 18 years.
Was this man aware that he was under investigation at any time prior to the arrest? Was it completely out of the blue and then years later police arrived at the store?
Yeah, there's Once I had identified him, we conducted no inquiries here for fear of warning him until we had a number of priorities in place. So he would have had nothing to indicate that this was coming.
Can you reveal why he was in trouble in New Zealand?
No.
Can you tell us what he was arrested for, the other matter that he was arrested for, that his DNA was actually taken?
No, it's similar to Australia, where you can get arrested for almost any offence in South Australia and you have your DNA taken and uploaded. So it was a matter there that didn't result in any term of imprisonment.
But you can't tell us what that offence was?
No, I shouldn't.
Right. Is he married? Has he got kids?
No, he's single and lived alone at a boarding house.
What's the response from Peter Sabeckis' family there? Sorry, Robert Sabeckis.
Yeah, they're really excited. They're really satisfied that somebody's been identified, that somebody will be held accountable, and it won't be just another unsolved homicide.
What was the reaction like for the police working on this case when that DNA sample came back and it was positive?
Look, everybody that works at major crime come there. They get up every day coming to work wanting to solve homicides, and it's just completely unsatisfactory to the community, to every police officer, that a homicide remains unsolved. So when you get a breakthrough like this, especially so long after, there's enormous satisfaction that you can actually deliver a result that's going to at least deliver some comfort to the families.
How frustrating is it that law change that allowed you to do that match with the New Zealand database didn't come sooner?
There's lots of places around the world where we can't even check DNA, so we're just grateful they've amended that legislation. It makes good common sense, and I hope that Australian law enforcement agencies benefit from it, and I hope that New Zealand benefits from the laws we've got in place here.
Can you tell us, I mean, it probably doesn't matter, I suppose, but what the DNA form is? Was it hair that you found? Was it blood that you've been able to use?
Look, I shouldn't discuss the evidence except to say that it's multiple samples from different locations, which we're very satisfied will provide compelling evidence.